Welcome, good friends. Today I'd like to talk about one of the things that Shakespeare recognized about tragic experience. And we have to say it expands from a play, which is an entertainment. It expands from a play into the nature of our lives. I'd like to do that using two of Shakespeare's greatest tragedies, Hamlet and Othello. In each of those plays, the most astonishing gift that the tragic figure has turns out to be the cause of his failure. And I must say that I think that also is, in many respects, true of our lives. Maybe not on the immense levels of the plays, but in what causes our failure, being the very abilities that disqualify us from successfully pursuing a necessity. Let's take an example from Hamlet. Hamlet is a graduate student. He might get a PhD someday if he had lived. He's used to thinking things through carefully and reaching intelligent decisions. That's admirable. That quality has undoubtedly advanced him in many ways in the past. But now he comes up against a situation in which that very quality ensures his failure. We recall the situation. Horatio has been brought to the battlements to witness the presence of a ghost that looks exactly like old King Hamlet, our Hamlet's father. He, like you and me, is a relatively educated person and rejects the idea of ghosts. Who, tush, tush, 'twill not appear, he says. And then it appears. Oh, that puts both Horatio and you and me in a position of accepting what we came here disbelieving. There are ghosts. That's one right there. Well, so they go to tell Hamlet. Hamlet's idea about ghosts is more or less the same as Horatio's at the outset, probably. He's in a terrible situation. His uncle married his mother and took over the kingdom, which probably should have been his. The people vote a king in, usually, and would have probably voted for the son of the former king. He's upset with that situation. At that time, marrying your brother-in-law is considered marrying your brother. So his mother is guilty of incest as well as hasty leaping forth to marriage within 2 months of his father's death. Now we understand Hamlet is not a weak person physically. When pirates attacked the ship on which he was being sent to England to be killed, he leaped onto their ship and fought with them magnificently, to such an extent that they admired him and sailed back to his land with him. He is physically able. When near the end of the play, he's challenged to have a battle of foils with Laertes, he accepts and he defeats Laertes. It's not a matter of physical gifts, but it's a matter of what his intellectual inclination is to think about and investigate everything. When he goes out and meets the ghosts ask him to kill his uncle who murdered him, pouring poison into his ear. Hamlet immediately says, yes, I'll kill him. Well, but then he ends up thinking about it. Are you sure the ghost is a ghost? Maybe it's an evil figure that, and so on. None of that is called for here. What's called for here is immediate action. And Hamlet's gift, his intellectual perspicuity, his intelligence, his desire to investigate everything, incapacitates him to deal with that. Probably the most famous soliloquy in the world, his soliloquy midway through the play, is a fascinating indication of something extreme on this level. To be or not to be? That is the question. Wait a minute. You're charged with murdering your uncle who murdered your father. Isn't that the question? At this point of the play, that is not the question. The question is whether to be, that is to say, to exist, or not to be, to cease to exist. Well, how do you cease to exist? Well, we can live a full life and die, but under these circumstances, it's committing suicide. To take arms against a sea of troubles and by opposing, end them. To take arms against a sea. Well, really, you can't. It just comes in. If there's a sea of troubles, they'll overwhelm you. The only way to take arms against that is to commit suicide, to die, to sleep, no more. Dying is exiting the world. We can conceive of it as a kind of eternal sleep. And even here, Hamlet thinks, but in that sleep of death, what dreams may come troubles the soul. Aye, there's the rub. What if a dead person, as a dreamer, an analogy with death, has to face the horrors that he thought he was escaping by committing suicide? Here, Hamlet has no intention to kill his uncle. No desire to find out, okay, is he guilty or not? No. It's to escape this. Or to live suffering. And indeed, he then realizes that the reason people live suffering is that death may involve the hell of a recollection of what we was trying to escape. Oh my goodness. That's what leads Hamlet to inaction. Indeed, he conceives of a kind of action. He'll put on a play in which he has the figure that stands for his uncle murdering his brother by pouring poisonous liquid into his ear. Does that. Claudius reveals his extreme anguish, although Hamlet's mother sees the same play and thinks that Claudius is just angry because his son is insulting him. When Hamlet comes to her closet, her bedroom, requested by her to do so, she says, "Thou hast thy father much offended." Meaning Claudius is his father, his stepfather. Hamlet's response is, "No, mother, thou hast my father much offended." Well, quite true. But there's also an extent to which Hamlet is guilty of disobeying his actual father. We don't have to go down the entire interpretation of the play. We've now seen that, in fact, tragic failure waits for our gifts to be the source of our failure. Shakespeare conveys to us in this great play. And what about the next play that he writes, Othello? Well, he has learned from his early days when he wrote Titus Andronicus, an awful piece of writing that Julie Taymor brilliantly made into the movie Titus. We don't have to go down that street of interpretation. It's available to you in earlier conversations. In Othello, we have a man physically gifted, brilliant as a warrior, knowing exactly where his obligations are and acting on them. He's a black man, formerly a Muslim, now in the Christian world, the general of Venice. When the Turks are thinking of attacking, he's called in and he becomes the source of our understanding that protection of Venice rests upon him. That business of pouring into one's ear poison. In Othello, the poison poured into Othello's ears are the words of suspicion from Iago, perhaps the most evil figure in all of great literature. Iago pours words into Othello's ear. He is the beloved husband of Desdemona, with whom he eloped because he knew that her father would disapprove of the marriage between him and his daughter. Though his father honored Othello regularly, had him over for dinners, listened to his stories, asked him questions. Indeed, Desdemona heard those conversations. She's a mature teenager, let's call her 19. She falls in love with that man. And essentially tells him she loves him. Tells him if he knows someone who lives and can tell stories like he does, send him to her. She would like to marry him. Essentially, she proposes to that great warrior, that brilliant general. And he falls in love with her. She's beautiful. She's young. He knows her father would disapprove of the marriage. In that context, there are two reasons to disapprove. One is his color, and the other his age. He's a man in his 40s, marrying a very young woman. But they marry. Iago is Othello's trusted, essentially master sergeant, highest ranking non-officer. Othello has chosen a lieutenant, a next in command, from Florence instead of promoting Iago. Why? He's an arithmetician, Iago says. But that's why, because he can figure out how to aim a cannon so that the ball will fly up in the air and land at the place where it's supposed to land. He can conceive of the organizing of the military as opposed to merely being a great fighter on the ground, which Iago is. But it's as a great fighter on the ground that Iago seeks revenge against Othello. For what? Because of Cassio? Well, that's one reason. He says, well, I think he's also slept with my wife. I don't know if it's true, but I'm going to act as if it is. Well, essentially, that's saying, it's not true. And that's another. Iago himself looks for a reason for his hatred and can't find it. Do I dare to say Shakespeare has recognized that there are literally evil people in the world? Yes. We in our time, politically, know of some evil people in the world, killing thousands of innocents to advance our purposes. I don't have to go down the present political street for you to recognize what it is. So, Iago pours the poison of evil words into Othello's ear. Oh, your wife loves you now, but Cassio's a man of about her age. And so on. And Othello is inflamed with anger and jealousy. Prove to me that. And Iago works out ways of making Othello seem to see Cassio acting in beloved ways with his wife. And so Iago convinces Othello with these false words to take vengeance. And he ends up murdering his beloved, brilliant, loving wife. If Hamlet were in this situation, he would say, well, wait a minute, let's really investigate this. Let's find out what's true. And since Desdemona is innocent, his investigation would lead to the recognition that Desdemona is innocent, and indeed that Iago is an evil person. He would solve that problem. Othello, in Hamlet's position, would say, "Why, gosh, that uncle murdered my father," and he would go off and kill him immediately. End of play. Non-tragedy. Whoa. Hamlet would do the investigation and find out that Iago had been lying. Iago arrested, his marriage moving forward in positive ways. No tragedy, but precisely their gifts condemn them to failure, to tragedy. And that's what you and I also have to be aware of in this world. The vision of that magnificent set of entertainments is also instructive on the highest levels. Thank you so much for being with me today. I hope you've enjoyed this. We'll talk again soon.